All right, so today I'm going to be trying to be answering two questions because I believe that these two questions are kind of related. They are both talking, they both have a central theme that is similar. So I'm going to read out the questions and try to answer both of them together. Now, the first question says, I'm struggling with social anxiety and shyness, which makes it difficult for me to connect with others, whether familiar or unfamiliar. Despite feeling the urge to engage, I often hesitate and hold back. This has led to missed opportunities and unfulfilled potential. I am eager to overcome this limitation, which has held me back for too long. Could you help me share your wisdom and guidance on how to break free from this restrictive mindset and unlock my full potential? Now, the second question, very similar too. It says, is self-love a good thing? What about self-esteem? If yes, how can I appropriately love myself and have a healthy self-esteem? Similarly, how can I manage my awareness that I have flaws and my desires to become a better person from becoming self-loathing? All right, these are two questions, and they both have to do with your perception of yourself, self esteem, and self love. And they're very good questions, and I want to thank the two people that have sent this question. Now, I want to start by saying we live in a world where diagnosis or diagnosis has become very easy. Diagnosis has become very easy. Now, I will have you know that I say very easy, not better. So to diagnose yourself has become easy, but it has become less accurate. It's not that accurate anymore. So people are self-diagnosing. And this is where I want to start by putting out a warning. I want to warn people to be careful about naming your condition. You know, sometime last year, my dog had a litter of puppies, and I wanted to sell them. And someone told me, if you want to sell your puppies, don't name them. Because I told the person, oh, I named them. This one is called this one is called this one is called this. And the person told me, don't name them. If you name them, you build an attachment to them. The moment you start to give them names, you build an attachment and it becomes hard to sell them. And when you begin to give them away and sell them, you begin to feel some sadness by letting go of them. And remember, this is something you set out to sell. But once you start naming them, you start endearing yourself to them. And so you must keep a healthy amount of apathy from these puppies. Don't name them. And but then I'd already gone around to name them, and my kids had named them. And I remember the day we started giving them, because most of them went on one particular day, and my kids were sad. And I felt some sadness too, even though I really wanted to let them go. But I built some attachment by naming them. I say this because sometimes we fall into that trap too when we diagnose ourselves. So the question is, are you shy or do you have social anxiety? They are two different things. Are you sad or are you depressed? They are two very different things. I used to think sadness was depression. So until my wife told me depression is a mental condition, the mental disorder. So I used to use the word I'm just so depressed when I was sad. So you have to ask yourself, are you sad or are you depressed? Are you moody or do you have bipolar disorder? Ask yourself that question because there are so many. You see, there are so many brands of disorder out there that we buy into. And I want to have you know that some are real, but some are imposed. And you need to be careful what you name what you are going through so that you do not subconsciously endear yourself to them and it becomes your identity and you begin to claim it. Because the truth is, we have these devices that connect us to the World Wide Web where there's so much information. And then we diagnose ourselves and say we are we have social anxiety, we are depressed, we have bipolar, we have ADHD, we have dyslexia, we have all manner of things, insomnia. We say a lot of things, but you must ask yourself, are you just having a period, a period with your emotions? Because they are emotional up and downs, and then there are mental conditions. And not everything that you go through is a mental disorder. Not everything. So we need to be careful what we call these things. We need to be careful, especially with the younger generation. You know, we get so much information from the internet, from we have more books than ever now. We have AI, and so a lot of things are amped up. There's an overload of information, and with this comes what we call misdiagnosis of our conditions. And so when you begin to read this thing and begin to say, "Oh, I have social anxiety," when actual fact you are shy, which is a pretty normal human condition. We have it at different levels. Some people are less shy, but everybody feels some insecurity about approaching people and about fully expressing themselves. Everybody feels a fear of being judged. Some are higher than the other, but not everybody has social anxiety. Let's be very careful because once you start reading this thing, you start going down this rabbit hole, and before you know it, you get medicated. You get medicated. And I must have you know that big pharma is the biggest industry in the world. Big pharma, bigger than entertainment, bigger than food, bigger than tech. Big pharma is the biggest. And it's getting bigger and bigger every day. Every day. Most people are over medicated. It has started coming to this society. When I lived in Canada, I realized one in every 5 or 3 people were on daily medications for conditions that they were having or that they were told they were having. And these were lifelong medications. We need to be very careful in what we call these conditions that we go through. Because when you read and read more, you begin to say, "This is who I am." And by the time you see who you are in a mental disorder, what you begin to see is what you need, or begin to search for is what you need. And a lot of time, that rabbit hole ends up in a pharmaceutical company where you're going to be diagnosed and given a drug that you will most probably use for the rest of your life. Most probably. Now, I'm going to say this with a lot of caution. It's also a dangerous thing to have a mental disorder, a condition, that a medical condition that needs medication, and we now take it like it's a mere emotional, temporary thing. That's also a very dangerous thing. And that's where somebody who is going through depression just feels like, okay, I'm just sad some days and stuff like that, when you actually need to see a doctor. So, one thing I would say is don't trust the internet as much. Go into a hospital, talk with a professional, let somebody diagnose you, even though that still has its dangers. Because the truth of the matter is, I say big pharma is very big, very deep pockets, and a lot of medical professionals get rewarded for misdiagnosing and putting people on lifetime drugs. That's the truth. But it's better than you telling yourself you have a condition just by typing in something on the internet. I remember there was a time I had um I had a throat infection. Um I had a throat infection, and I went to Google and just said, oh, I have this thing, I have problem swallowing, I have this, and immediately um um Google told me I had cancer. You understand? Google told me I had cancer, and I was scared for a very long time. You understand how, man? It's the onset of cancer. And then I went to the doctor and they told me I had tonsillitis. And as a matter of fact, I was never given any medication. It cleared by itself. But here I was for days, bothered and worried that I had cancer. So we need to be careful. Don't name the puppies, or else they just become, you become attached to them and they become an identity. And then you begin to say, my insomnia, my social anxiety, my ADHD, my bipolar. It becomes a part of you that subconsciously you don't want to let go of anymore. So we need to be careful. We need to be careful. And that said, I really believe that a lot of what has been said here stems from a lack of adequate knowledge of the self and an acceptance of the self. When we struggle with shyness, or we struggle with emotions like self-loathing, any self-loathing emotion, it comes from, number one, a lack of awareness of the self and a lack of acceptance of the self. And it's something a lot of us go through, insecurities that we have, deep-seated insecurities. And a lot of it starts from childhood. A lot of us were raised by parents who were highly insecure too themselves, because they were raised by parents that were highly insecure. So this thing just bounces from generation to generation. A lot of us lived in environments or in homes where we were compared, not maliciously, not because our parents wanted to destroy us, but they knew no better. You understand? So they compared us to people within the family, people outside the family. You know, a lot of parenting nowadays is done with fear. There's a fear that you do not want your child to turn out in a particular way. And where there's fear, there's always overcompensation. So you overcompensate. So you don't want your child to turn out in a particular way. You hold them back from going out. You understand? You don't want them to become street kids. You don't want them to become rebellious. You don't want them to pick up some characters from other people. So you say, oh, nobody goes out in this house. Everybody stays indoors. You don't want your kids to pick up particular things, so you take away the TV. There should be no TV in this house. So fear always makes us overcompensate. We always act irrationally when there is fear. Fear is not a good thing. We should always make decisions out of understanding. Understanding is less compulsive, is less impulsive. You understand? So a lot of us were raised with fear, not with understanding. And so this has formed an insecurity within us. So where there is self-loathing and where there is shyness, or where there are anger issues, or where there is pride, it shows that something is not known about the self. There is no awareness of the self, and there is no acceptance of the self. And I think it's very important. Someone sent me a message some days ago, and the person said, He had been listening to the podcast and he really wants to get to know God. He really wants to get to know God. He said it's something he has been working on to know God. He says, I want to know God. And I have a lot of people tell me this. It was something I used to ask myself a long time ago too. Oh, Tola, do you know God enough? I tell people also tell me. I ask people also tell me, Tola, I want to get to love God. I want to get to love God more. I don't love God enough. So say they want to know God. They want to love God. So they feel there's a deficit in their knowledge of God or in their love for God. But then, immediately I got this question from this person. The first thing that came to my mind is the most important thing about knowing God, the most important thing to know about God, 90%, if not 99% of knowing God is understanding that God knows you. I'll say that again. 99% of what we call knowing God, if there's any such thing, if our minds can ever wrap around the concept of God, 99% of the truth about knowing God is understanding that God knows you. The biggest awareness of God is knowing that God is totally aware of us. Once you live with a consciousness that God is ever aware of you, He knows you. In fact, it doesn't start with He knows you. He knew you before you were born. He knows you while you are alive. And He will continue to know you even when you stop living. Once you become conscious of this, then you know God. You know enough about God. The consciousness of God is light. And the consciousness of God is that He's totally conscious about you. In fact, that is the consciousness of God's love. God's love, the consciousness of God's love is knowing that God knows you. He knows your condition. He's aware. Not only is He aware, He's in charge. Not only is He in charge, He designed it. Once you can live with that understanding, you know God. Knowing God is not about what we call prayer. You understand? It's not about your prayer life, how much you trust God to do particular things in your life. In fact, the more you bring to God to do in your life and say, God, I want you to do this, I want you to do this, I want you to do this, it reveals that you do not really know God. Because a person that truly knows God does less of God, I want you to do this, because he's aware that God knows everything he or she needs. So they spend more time listening, trying to listen to those things that God needs of them. When you are aware that God is aware about every situation in your life, whether big or small, you will spend less of what you call your prayer time talking and asking for things you want, but you will start being more conscious of what God requires of you to do. So the more we blab and treat God like Santa Claus, I need this, I need this, I need this, I've been a good boy, I've been a good girl, I need this, I want this, I want this, I want this, it shows that you do not really know God. Because the height of knowing God is knowing that God is totally aware of everything you need. And that's why the scripture tells us, Jesus says, don't worry about what you shall eat, what you shall drink, what you shall have, because the Father already knows what you need. The Father knows you need them. He said only pagans run after such things. Pagans are people that have no true consciousness or awareness of God. The awareness of God and knowing is rooted in knowing that God is totally aware of us. And that awareness in itself is the foundation of self. It's the foundation of knowing and accepting yourself. Very important. And I'll make this clear. I'll make this clearer. If you know that God is aware of you and everything you have, everything you are, everything you are going to be, He has designed, He knew it before you were born, you will be more accepting of who you are. And things like shyness would have will not have a strong grip on you. I'm not saying that you'll be totally free from them. I'm not saying that, because there is a healthy side to being shy that makes us prepare ourselves rather than just launch out into the world. It's healthy to be shy. So I don't want anybody to ever feel like, oh, you should never be shy. No. It's healthy to be shy because it makes us self-assess. My oldest son, he's he's going to be 9. And you see, he had this challenge every time of goes to the bathroom, comes out, and we are going to the bathroom because the shirt is half tucked in, the trouser is no. And I always tell him, no, before you come out, you need to check yourself. When you go to a public space and you go to the bathroom, you should check and arrange your shirt. But because he's still a young boy, he wasn't shy. He just comes out and everybody's like, come on, tuck your shirt in, that kind of thing. You see, so I need to make him a little bit aware of people out there. I say, look, there need to be a bit of insecurity, just a little bit of saying, am I okay? Am I okay? Do I need to present myself better? Very important. So there needs to be a little bit of shyness to allow us prepare ourselves. It helps for preparation. A little bit of shyness prepares for preparation. But then we shouldn't lose our identity. And so it's very important for us to know that God knows exactly who we are, how we are, what we are. And they are not just characteristics, they are equipping. I'll say this again. The reason why we are shy, the reason why we self-loathe is because we do not know that everything we are given is a weapon. We think everything we are given is just a characteristic. God was just having fun. No, it's more than fun for God. God is intentional. Every single thing about you is totally intentional. It's an equipping. God was placing weapons in you so that you can come to the world and fight darkness. So they're all weapons of light. Every single thing. From the way your toenails grow, to the shape of your fingernails, to the shape of your ears, to the length of your hair, the texture of your hair, the texture of your skin, your height, everything, your voice, everything is a weapon of light. God gave it to you so that you can bring light to the world, so that you can make the world better. Because I will have you know that the world we are living in is a war of light and darkness. And when God brings a child to the world, it brings an extra soldier. Because I will have you know that there are hundreds of millions of dark characters in the world. Hundreds of millions. You think we are men in this world? Let God open your spiritual eyes. You see how many demons there are. You are a soldier of Christ. And God wants to recruit you. The devil wants to recruit you to his own army. You must be conscious of that. So God has equipped you with everything you need. Every time you self-loathe, you fail to see God's intentionality about you. God is intentional about everything that makes you. You see, God has taught me this about my own life in different ways. I tell people, when I was younger, I used to stutter a whole lot. I used to stutter a lot. I couldn't make a statement without stuttering. And it was frustrating. It was embarrassing. But the truth of the matter was it was intentional. But I only got to know that many years later. If you listen to my podcast a lot, you'd realize that I talk very slowly. I pick my words. And stuttering helped me to pick my words. One thing about stuttering, if there's anybody here that stutters, you realize that before the word comes out of your mouth, you can already tell that your tires are stuck in the mud. You can tell that this one will be a hump to get over. But it's already there. So it's either you commit to it or you change the word. A lot of people try to commit to it, but then the tire just keeps rolling. I don't know if anybody has ever had tires in the mud before. It just keeps rolling. The more you rave, the deeper you get. And so I had to start doing something. Changing the words. Changing the words. So I became slower in my talking. It became a subconscious action. At first it was conscious, but later it became subconscious. I started to say, okay, I cannot say hello. Just a simple word like hello, picking up the phone and just saying hello, who is this? Immediately I want to say hello, I just get stuck with that H. It can't come out again. I'm stuck. Immediately I just have to think this conversation has to go on. What can I say? So I might say hi. I might say good morning. I might just start with who is this? You understand? So I learned how to replace words and I learned how to speak slowly. I never knew that speaking slowly was going to help me to teach in future, was going to help me to emphasize words. I never knew. You see, it was an equipping, it was a training. It was not a disadvantage, it was a training. God wanted me to be a slow speaker. He wanted me to be intentional about my words, to choose my words carefully, because he knew that many people would be listening to my words. Very intentional. It was a weapon, not a disadvantage. You see, when I was in my early teenage years, I had this cousin who came to stay with us. And he was some years older than me, maybe about 3 years older than me. So it was in a much higher class. I was in JS2 then. I think he was in like SS1. And he was so into bodybuilding. I was not into bodybuilding. I grew up in a house with two girls. So I wasn't into bodybuilding. Anything physicality, I wasn't into any of that. I was into indoor games and stuff, playing by myself. I wasn't a physical guy at all. In fact, I used to play with dolls with my sisters. Play with dolls. They would give me a rapper to rap. I would back the doll. I didn't know that God was using all those things to make me a more sensitive guy. But the thing, back to my cousin, he came to stay with us, and he loved to bodybuild. So he got weight. He would make weight. He would do push-ups. And he used to tell me, Tola, come and do push-ups with me. You see, I don't have a muscular body. And it has been like that since I was young. No muscular body. I don't have a muscular body. So then I would do push-ups with him, do push-ups. I would do push-ups every day. And his body was beginning to form. I could see his chest. I could see his muscles, his biceps, everything. But I was doing the same thing as him, and my body wasn't forming. And it was always very, for me, it was always very tormenting. It used to torment me. Like, why is he seeing feedback to his own exercising? I'm not seeing any kind of progress. You understand? I'm not seeing any kind of development. I have one of those bodies that no matter how much I try, before you see someone will carry weights for 2 weeks, I have to carry for 2 years before you see any definition. My body shape is not one that is very not muscular. I'm not a muscular guy. But then I've come to realize that because of my physique is not intimidating at all. And because of that, a lot of people are not threatened by me at all. They're not threatened by me. And you see, that used to disturb me in secondary school because I used to feel like I could see guys that were much bigger, much muscular, and nobody ever tried them. You understand? But people used to try me a lot. And I think when I talk about trying, I'm talking about pick fights with me. Say, because I wasn't muscular. But I never knew it was an equipping. For me, when people meet me, they're not intimidated. They're not threatened. They don't feel bullied. They don't feel overwhelmed. They feel very trusting. And so when people are with me, they open up very easily. When I talk to people, they open up easily. They feel relaxed. They tell me what's on their mind. I'm not a domineering looking man. So they tell me what's on their mind. They feel safe. It was an equipping. I used to loathe it, but then I began to understand. I began to understand that it was God's design for something. I tell people a lot about my gray hair. I have a lot of gray hair. I've had premature graying for a very long time, you understand? Since I hit my 20s. In fact, I've been having strands since I was very young, you understand? So I was 10, you just see odd strands of gray. But it started to increase when I hit my 20s. And by the time I got into my 30s, it just became overwhelmingly much. And I was insecure about it. I was insecure about it when I started to have it. I didn't like it. I hated it, to be honest with you, because everybody was distracted by it. Why your hair so gray? Why you this? Why this? So I started to dye my hair. I started to dye it because I wasn't accepting of it. I became shy because I didn't see the God in it. I didn't see it as a weapon. And so I used to dye my hair, but then that started destroying my hair. My hair started to fall out. And someone told me, stop dyeing this hair. You're destroying your hair. You're destroying your hair. Because my hair started to, the texture started to become thinner and started to fall out. Every time I comb my hair, a lot of hair will be on the comb. I said, stop dyeing it. Just let it be. So I stopped. And it was hard the first few times, first year, second year of, a lot of people were asking, why don't you dye your hair? You are too young for this. You are too this. Just strangers will come out and just start saying, stop dyeing your hair. How old are you? Stuff like that. But then I realized that it has helped me in my chosen career. I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of teaching. But when people see the gray, it allows me to speak to people that are even older than me. Because when they look at it, they can't judge how old I am. And there's something about having this amount of gray hair that I have that just makes people honor you. So when I go to places, I remember I had this engagement and I was thinking, oh man, all these people, they're much older than I am. I'm meant to go and speak to them. How do I speak to these people that are older than me? But when I got there, they couldn't even tell. They thought I was one of them. You understand? And I spoke with them and they listened with rapt attention. They listened with rapt attention. You see, I realized that God is calling me to be a father figure to a lot of people. When a lot of people see me physically, they see a father figure. They don't see a young man. They see a father figure. It was an equipping. It helps to amplify my gift. It helps for people to pay attention to my gift. God is intentional. God is a designer. God is aware of you. Every single thing about you. Every single thing. God is aware of it. Every single thing is an equipping. Never loathe those things that come to you naturally. Never. They're an equipping. Everything is an equipping. God is that aware. The reason we are shy, the reason we self-loathe, is because we do not know God. And as I said, 99% of knowing God is understanding that God knows us. He knows everything about us. He knows your skin complexion. Your skin complexion is a weapon against darkness. Is a weapon to save lives. You don't understand how God is going to use it, but it's a weapon. So a lot of times when we go ahead and change things, we must be very careful about changing things that were given to us. Be very careful about changing things just because you do not like them. You need wisdom before you change things. Be very careful about changing things that were given. Because as I said, the more aware you are that God is aware of you, the more you will slow down to take some decisions about altering yourself. Everything was given to you for an equipping. It's an equipping. If only parents understood this, we will criticize our children less. You see, when I was growing up, I didn't used to like to read. Not big on reading. My sisters, on the other hand, they like to read. I wasn't big on reading. I was seen as a very playful child. I was playful. And I used to like to watch TV a lot. I watched TV a lot. At that time, that was seen as a disadvantage. But now I understand why. And that's why when I teach a lot, I tell you, oh, I watched this movie. I watched this series. It helped to build my wisdom. That's why I don't totally agree when they tell people, oh, TV is chewing gum for the mind. I don't totally agree. I don't. I learn a lot from what I watch on TV. It was an equipping. My son is just like me. Watches a lot of TV, is very creative, draws a lot. Sometimes we feel tempted to stop him. But then we must understand that even in that desire towards that thing called TV, toward TV content, there is an equipping. The devil wants us to self-loathe so that we never use our weapons against his army. He wants us to self-loathe so we never use our weapon against his army. I think the first thing we need to do is become more aware of God. And as I said, the biggest thing about being aware of God is being aware that God himself is aware of us. Once you accept that, you begin to accept yourself. You begin to see beauty in who you are. You begin to make less compromises. You begin to understand that your hair balding is not an error. It's not simply hereditary or genetics, intentional. Every single hair that falls from your head was intended. That receding hairline is a weapon. You must understand this. That skin problem you have is a weapon. I tell you, When I was a teenager, I had a lot of acne. Very insecure about it. I was very insecure. Didn't want to go out. But even in that insecurity, God was weaponizing me. Because that made me very empathetic of people and their insecurities. That's why I'm doing this right now. That's why I love answering questions, because when people have insecurities, I feel an empathy towards them. I know what it's like to be insecure. God took me through a period of insecurity about myself, so that when I see people that are insecure, I don't judge them and just expect them to just snap out of it. I understand. It was intentional. I had to go through that phase. I didn't need medication. It wasn't social anxiety. It was designed. We need to become more aware of God and begin to embrace the reality and the knowledge that God is so aware of you. He knows who you are. He made who you are. Everything is an equipping, not just a characteristic. Every single thing is an equipping. Everything is intentional. It might look like it's pure aesthetics, has no function. Every single thing has a function. Has a function to reflect God's light. Sometimes people see God's light and they call it ugly. The Bible tells us the light came into the world and the world did not even recognize that that was light. So forget about what people are saying. Oh, this is so ugly, this, so this, oh, we don't like this, you should be more like this, you should be more like that. First thing, tune into the person that knows you the most. God knows me. Say, God, open my eyes to allow me to see how much you know me. Knowing you is too much for my mind. It's too much. My mind can never grasp it. But at least let me know that you know me. Let me know that you love me. So today I'm going to do something I've not done before while answering a question, because I believe that these two questions are based on acceptance of the self. And it's not just a physical thing, not just about listening to a podcast and listening to my voice and moving on from it and then the problem is solved. As I said, this life, the world is a battle. Darkness and light. So mere talk doesn't change anything. It's very spiritual. So today I'm going to pray for these two people and any other person here that is listening that is yet to accept themselves or become aware of the God in them. So if you're listening right now and you're struggling with a sense of identity, low self-esteem, self-loathing, anxiety, you might have been diagnosed, whether it's self-diagnosed or a professional has diagnosed you, you're on medication, whatever it is, just listening, and it's becoming hard to accept yourself. I want you to join me in praying. Father, I pray for everyone listening to me right now. And I pray that you shall make your light shine into their lives. That light that allows them to see you in them. That light that allows them to understand the width, the depth, the height of your love for them. Your love that brings in confidence. Your love that brings in understanding. Your love that brings in clarity. Let it envelope their lives right now. Let them begin to see your intentionality in their lives. where they have been rejected. Let them feel your acceptance. Make them aware of your intentionality in their very design, and help them to begin to accept themselves as they totally surrender to you. Where they have been lied to, let your truth begin to pervade their lives. In Jesus' name, amen.